Did you know that kids are showing signs of anxiety as young as 4 and 5?
And did you know also that early intervention can make a huge difference, not just with anxiety, but with so many emotional and social challenges?
That's exactly why we've written these books.
Introducing Owen and Lucy, our 2 brand new children's books featuring the beloved Daystar dogs.
These sweet stories aren't just about our adorable pups, although they are incredibly cute. They're designed to help your child build resilience, courage, and emotional tools that will make a lifelong impact.
And when you pre-order by May 12th, you'll get some fun exclusive bonuses like a printable feelings chart and feelings thermometer. Click on the show notes for more information.
Hey friends, welcome to the Raising Boys and Girls podcast. I'm Sissy Goff.
And I'm David Thomas.
And I'm Melissa Trevathan.
And we're so glad you joined us for this conversation. Let's dive in. Dr. Lisa Miller is the New York Times bestselling author of The Spiritual Child and a professor in the clinical psychology program at Teachers College at Columbia University. She is the founder and director of the Spirituality Mind-Body Institute, the first Ivy League graduate program and research institute in spirituality and psychology, and has held over a decade of joint appointments in the Department of Psychiatry at Columbia University Med School. Her innovative research has been published in more than 100 peer-reviewed articles in leading journals, including the American Journal of Psychiatry and the Journal of the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry. We are thrilled to share this incredibly hopeful and thoughtful conversation with Dr. Miller.
Dr. Miller, we are delighted to get to talk with you. As we were just saying before, we have quoted you for decades. We have slides in one of our parenting presentations with all of your research. We talk about you in Are My Kids on Track, one of our books. We're just so grateful for your work.
Well, I'm so grateful to you, Sissy and David. You know, at the core of every whole child is the spiritual core,
Yes.
right? In the formation of every whole child is the spiritual core. So what you are doing as a faith-based counseling center is exactly what children and families need. I'm so delighted to celebrate and mirror all that you're doing with the language of science.
You're so kind.
Yes.
Well, in case you've ever wondered why your publisher may have mentioned that you're selling a lot of books in the state of Tennessee, we're going to be confirmation of why that's happening. But we would love to begin by just having you tell us a little bit about how you found your way to the important work you're doing.
Oh, so Sissy and David, I started out as a clinical psychologist, standard training in the late 90s. And I was trained at that time, both in psychotherapy, treatment of mental suffering and diagnoses, but also, the full spectrum from treatment to prevention to what was at the time the emerging wellness field. And what I saw time after time was that in the road to recovery, whether it was coming out of addiction, whether it was through struggle and depression or even trauma, when there was a family that had a strong spiritual life, the prognosis was entirely different. When there was God at the center of the family, the road to recovery was not just one of getting back to baseline, but rather a move beyond recovery to renewal. That God in the home brought that child and brought that family to a higher place, a deeper understanding, and even a closer relationship with God.
Beautiful.
I know. And I'm so excited to talk about the science that backs that up. But will you kind of jump in there? Because as I mentioned, we talk about you and quote you in our book, Are My Kids on Track? And in that book, we talk about the 4 emotional, 4 social, and 4 spiritual milestones we hope every child is reaching and moving towards. And so you have some amazing statistics about the spiritual relationship with at least one parent. And will you talk about just the statistics on spirituality and families anyway, but that too?
Well, Sissy and David, as you know, in so many of our beautiful world faith traditions, we know that we are made by God, whatever one's word may be in the whole wide world. We are made by God in God's image, right? Through the lens of science, we have now shown through multiple peer-reviewed studies that just as we are physical beings and emotional and social beings, every little baby born all around the world is a naturally spiritual being. We know this through the lens of a twin study. We can look at twins raised together, twins raised apart, and factor out commonality between those twins as a factor of genes and environment. So, if you've ever looked at a newborn baby, you know we're not a blank slate. Right? Our temperament, whether we're maybe more tightly wound or laid back, the baby that wakes up 4 times until she's 18 months versus the baby who sleeps through the night. Temperament is inborn. But by the time that we're adults, temperament is 50% hardwired, 50% shaped, modified. We can environmentally alter our temperament. An extrovert can push themselves to have quiet moments, and an introvert can, okay, I'm going to that party, So the capacity through which we experience spiritual life is shown now through twin studies to be innate. We are born naturally spiritual beings. But whereas temperament's half and half, the capacity in every single one of us for a relationship to our higher power, who I call God, a relationship to God, is inborn, but it's 1/3 inborn, 2/3 environmentally formed, which means parents and grandparents, equally parents and grandparents, help nurture your child's natural capacity for a relationship to God. Any inborn capacity has its home in the brain, and we can track, as we have in our MRI studies, the circuits that hold and sustain body, mind, and soul, our relationship with God. Here we are, born naturally spiritual beings with circuits in the brain through which we can be in relationship to God. But 1/3 innate, 2/3 environmentally formed means that praying out loud at the dinner table, praying as we come and go throughout the day. Thank you, God, for the beautiful day that my child just had at school. Thank you, God, for this gorgeous sunset. Thank you, God, all day long, narrating our ongoing open system, our ongoing relationship with God, says to the child, God is real. We talk about that here. There's a language and a way in. And most of all, our relationship and our family goes to that depth. It's not the 3 of us or the 4 of us or the 6 of us at the dinner table. God is through the whole family. This is not one more thing for parents to do with travel soccer, right? And cello. This is the golden thread that goes through every moment of our lives. That's who we are as parents. We are spiritual ambassadors. And the science mirrors that. So Sissy and David, to your point, as parents, what can we do? Know that at every moment, you are a torchbearer. We don't make the light, of course, but we carry it. And we have one job, which is to pass the torch. That is our job. And everything else will then fall into place.
It's beautiful.
I love that within answering that, you talked about grandparents, and we wanted to ask about that. Will you talk some about the benefit grandparents bring a child when they share faith? And excited to hear your
And I'm going to add for a personal question,
Please,
are aunts and uncles included in that as well?
Oh, yes.
Okay, good.
Yes. Loving, committed adults. And it could even be a devoted neighbor who's taken the child under her wing or his wing, or a big brother, big sister, someone like that. So when we make a commitment to the child and then every single day bring our spiritual voice and spiritual heart into that relationship, it doesn't matter where we're the parent or grandparent, if we're the aunt or uncle, if we are devoted, we could be a godmother or godfather. The child has an entirely different path in life. You are extremely important into the entire unfolding of that child's life, because it only takes one adult who shares 2 things: unconditional love of the heart, which is a divine love, and transparency, the voice, the deep sharing of their own spiritual and religious life. And when those 2 go hand in hand, then we have nurtured the natural spiritual gift in the child. All unconditional love, being loving no matter whether I got an A or a C, being loving if I made a moral mistake, that you still love me as a child unconditionally, a soul on earth. And then walking with me as your child to narrate, I made a mistake as well when I was in 5th grade, or when I was 14, I wondered about what God really thought about me. And, that openness in your own story, that child will remember it the rest of their life. And then pray by their side, whatever your prayer is, and invite them to join you and use their voice in the prayer. That is the passing of the torch. Through the lens of science, we see that when we walk the walk, unconditional love, and talk the walk, pray out loud, transparency into your stories, that child is 80% protected against depression. 90% protected if that torch is passed through 2 generations, grandparent to child. There's nothing in our culture as powerful as the intergenerational passing of the torch, the intergenerational transmission of spiritual and religious life. That child is not being taught religion. Their natural knowing of God is being nurtured by you.
And now a quick break to hear from one of our awesome sponsors so that we can bring you all this great content.
David, I am so excited about my garage.
Well, those aren't words you hear every day.
Well, but let me tell you why. We just had work day at the lake, and I came home and I wanted to redo my entire garage and get it organized like every Enneagram 1 would. And I bought shelves to organize my garage. I bought a tool organizer. I even bought a ball organizer for the boys when they come over. And all of it is thanks to Wayfair.
We love Wayfair, and summer is on its way, and there's no better place to go for outdoor furniture than Wayfair. We just updated our front porch thanks to Wayfair. Wayfair's huge selection of outdoor essentials will help you make your outdoor space more comfortable, functional, and most importantly, more you.
There's something for every style and every home, no matter your space or budget, including the outdoors and your garage. Wayfair makes it easy to tackle your summer home goals with endless inspiration for every space and budget.
Free, fast, and easy delivery, even on the big stuff. They'll even help you set it up.
Shop a huge selection of outdoor furniture online. This summer, get outside with Wayfair. Head to wayfair.com right now.
That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. And now back to the show. I have chills as you're talking about that.
It made me so teary, you saying that. I know.
It's profound.
Yes. Well, you have a new book called The Awakened Brain, The New Science of Spirituality and Our Quest for an Inspired Life. Will you talk more about what you mean by an inspired life?
When we open to God's presence in every moment of our life, then the map of reality is illuminated. We now see the sacred landscape on which we all walk. And what I mean by that is that as a scientist, we can see in the brain when we look at the comings and goings of life. I did not get that job and I'd done everything right. My child was just not admitted to that magnet school where I'd wanted them to go so much. Why on earth did he betray me, right? These things that we don't want, the real bumps in the road. What God do you ask of me now? How, God, might I love even more deeply? How can I live in a way that is not a punitive tit for tat, but that is guided by, tit for tat's not much of a way to live. God, what do you reveal to me now? When we take these moments that are so difficult and so not what we wanted and hand them over to God in our prayer life, go beyond ourselves. When I feel at my worst, can I go just do a little tiny something nice for someone else, which is, of course, prayer in action, serve God, one another. Suddenly, we understand life in a much more profound way. We see that we are loved at every moment. We see that we are guided by God at every moment. And we see that we are never alone. Loved, guided, and never alone. each of those deep understandings into life that come often through an awakening, suffering as the door, really the bang at the door to an awakening. Each of those deep, profound understandings has a home in the brain through which we can realize and see God's presence. Loved and held, the bonding network comes online. Guided, there's a shift in our attention network from the little narrow bowling alley. Why didn't I get the job? Why did he do that to me? Versus, wow, what God are you revealing of me now? This whole new direction over here, a job that I didn't know existed, someone who sees me for who I really am. And we are never alone. That is the parietal region. Love. So you are built, every one of us, parent, child, grandparent, to see and know that we are loved, held, guided, and never alone by God. And still, this capacity that is in all of us, made in God's image, to be in relationship to God, is strengthened oftentimes through the road of trials. So suffering doesn't mean that we're off the path or not being good religious people. Suffering is often the initial phase to drawing closer in our relationship to God. Suffering can be the opening to an awakening.
It is
and the awakened brain is
amazing.
about that. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, it's that verse that talks about suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope. I mean, that is what you just said from a scientific standpoint, that suffering is that pathway. So thank you. This is just beautiful.
It is.
Now, you may have known that all along. Faith needs no science. Faith needs no proof. But just as we might stand up one by one and give testimony in our own individual life, science is a form of witness unto us as a collective. We can say that over this 100 people or 1,000 people, those who turn to God for guidance in times of difficulty are 80% less likely to become addicted, are 70% less likely to take really self-harming risks, like drive 90 miles an hour or jump out a window at a party, are, tragically, I know you have many young children for whom you care. The setup is in early childhood, and our public square has silenced spiritual life. Right? So 40 years ago, in what I think was probably a well-intentioned attempt to be inclusive, there was this movement in the 80s. I remember it well. Take down the Hanukkah menorah, take down the Christmas tree from town square. We're going to be inclusive by silencing everybody, which of course was not inclusive at all. It was radically exclusive. The public square became, it was an ice age, a frozen cold place for the free expression of faith life. Right? Congress shall make no law establishing a religion nor prohibiting free expression thereof. And the free expression really got trampled on. Well, things are getting better. We've grown up as a society, and it's time now for more free expression. Free expression is constitutional. Free expression is inclusive. Free expression allows every family to pray out loud in their way, every child to turn to God in their way. What you have established as a faith-based counseling center strengthens the deepest, most essential core in every child, strengthens the spiritual life in the family so that child can go out into any public square and they know the sanctity of who they are. They know the sanctity of who their classmates are. And they know that they're always watched and loved by God. That's an entirely different life. And it's actually the way we're built.
And I think your work has allowed us to have thoughtful conversations around that in such an extraordinary way. So we cannot thank you enough for how you've labored and that your work lives at the intersection of neuroscience and faith. And are there any other ways that you would say that our spiritual lives impact our brains uniquely?
Oh, yes. So when we look at people who raise their children to have a strong spiritual and religious life, and the way that this is often shown, the two dimensions as parents that we can most contribute to strengthening our children's natural spirituality are one, first and foremost, their direct relationship to God. When we as parents help our children turn to God every day in good and bad, in moments of gloriousness and moments of pain, I turn to God for guidance in times of difficulty. Guidance is not just, oh, I believe in God. Guidance is a lived connection, a dynamic relationship of knowing in the heart. I turn to God for guidance. And if I have a tough decision, I ask, what really does God want me to do? That's an ongoing walk together, sustained, ongoing relationship. That capacity built in the child is more protective than anything we have discovered in clinical or social science against the epidemic of the diseases of despair. Right now, addiction, depression, anxiety, suicidality are plaguing 55% of American youth. 50, over half of now, I'm in my 50s. If you told me 40 years ago, before the Ice Age, that this was going to happen, I wouldn't believe that the number one killer of high school students was suicide. That's like some sort of dystopic horror film.
Yes.
Suicide rivals car accidents as the number one killer of youth. And yet we have the antidote, because in a meta-analysis, a study of all good studies, it was shown that a strong spiritual life shared in the family, shared in fellowship, or the Sangha, the Minyan, spiritual life perhaps shared in a faith-based community, is 82% protective, 4/5 protective against the number one killer of youth. So if this were a little pill, we could give this out at school, we could give this out at camp, we could give this out at the counseling center.
Yes.
Who wouldn't want this for their child? And yet we have the antidote to the mental health crisis, because really we're not having a mental health crisis. We are having a spiritual crisis.
Mm.
To reverse suffering, we start with the spiritual heart.
Mm. Incredible.
I know. Well, so we have been practicing for 30 years at this point, and one of the things that we feel most concerned about, which ties into exactly what you're saying, is the lack of resilience among kids, that we have never seen it like it is. How would you say spirituality plays into resilience?
Well, Sissy and David, you know that you can just hear a truckload out there about the character strengths and virtues. I want my kid to be resilient. I want my kid to be full of grit and optimism. What do I want for my child? That they might have that stick-to-itness. Right? Mm. The character strengths and virtues actually are not evenly distributed amongst young people. It's not that some young people are trained to have grit and other young people are trained to have optimism, and yet those more have forgiveness. It turns out when we looked at 250,000, over 250,000 young people, that the very same young people who have grit, have optimism, are forgiving, have a sense of awe and wonder for the world, the character strengths and virtues all cluster in the same kids. Mm. Character is a global quality, because really, character is virtue. Mm-hmm. So then when we looked under the hood, how did those kids way up there get so high in character and resilience and stick-to-itness? And how did those kids who we love just as much, you devote your life to helping people along, struggle with optimism, have trouble getting back, hit and roll, hit and quit, So how do you help those? And it turns out that character is spiritually embedded. The people who look like they have a lot of character and virtue actually are understanding life in relationship to God. And it sounds like this. Who am I on earth? Well, let's tell the story with and without a spiritual core. How does the little child, the 5-year-old, the 10-year-old, come to know themselves, who they are, even if they don't use those words yet? How do you look at them as a parent or a teacher or a counselor? Well, there's 2 ways to look at the child. Who are you? You are the one who scored 3 goals. You are the one that got the highest score in the class on the math test. You are the one that I'm afraid is struggling and needs to go to extra help. You are your performance. And the way that gets communicated is that it's pickup time at school. And the first thing I say is, how'd the math test go? Or the first thing I say is, did you win today? It is a performance-based culture. Our parenting culture from this ice age, silent on spirituality, has become a transactional parenting culture. How'd you do today? But you have an alternative, and it's alive and well in a faith-based home, such as yours, right? Faith-based counseling would say, well, that's great, you're good at math, but that's not who you are. What is it to be good at math? Well, that's a gift. It's an endowment. Who are you? You're a child of God. Who are you? You are a soul on earth. You're a being of infinite worth. So good at math, that might be a gift through which to form your calling, your contribution. It is not who you are. So 2 stories, right? The transactional story and the unconditional soul on earth. Right?
Mm.
The soul on earth turns out, through the lens of science, to be much more resilient. Because the soul on earth has a day where he or she lost the game. It's going to come. The soul on earth has a day where they went from being the top 5% in high school to the bottom quarter as an engineering major in college. If I look around and I'm now in the bottom quarter and I'm nothing but a math star, big math, right? That's existentially terrifying. I'm nothing. But if I look around and I say, okay, I used to be in the top 5% and I'm in the bottom quarter. I used to win every game. And now at the college level, I'm benched. Now at the college level, I'm benched. It's disappointing. It can be very disappointing, but it is not who I am. It is noise on the trajectory of my larger sacred calling. I'm here to serve God, and math is used to clean the water, to connect people, to teach those who don't have access. There's a much bigger picture, and it is a sanctified picture to my life. Yes, I have more grit because tomorrow I'll get up to serve God again and I'll find another way. I have more optimism because I'm here for a purpose, a deep purpose, not like teacher, lawyer, doctor, serving God purpose, and the details will unfold. Totally different life. Today, a lot of resilience far too often is told in schools and the public square only in terms of traits and human capacities. But really, the deeper scientific findings show that resilience comes from a sustained spiritual connection.
Goodness. So much richness.
I know.
Okay. Dr. Miller, we've got one more question because we want to honor your time. Within your book, you talk about how building a life of meaning and contribution, the difference that can make. How can parents help their kids find their way, not only to their own sense of faith, but also to meaning and contribution?
You know, David and Sissy, you raised such an important point because the very same deep spiritual seat in the brain through which I talk to God is the very same deep spiritual seat in our brain through which I see God in you, my sister, my brother. Relational spirituality has a common home, and every faith tradition knows this. As you do unto others, you do unto me. As you do to the least of these, you do to me. It is literally how we are built to be able to see and know one another. So what does this mean for the child? The child will, at a family party, be talking to the waitress or the bartender as an equal soul on earth. The child knows the godliness in all life, and we can simply nourish that child sense. Oh, that little mother duck loves her baby the way I love you. Oh, I'm so glad you talked to the waitress. You know, she has a son, just like you are my son. We can bring the godliness of everyone around us into the child's awareness. And in that moment of love for one another, the child is ever more awakened to God's presence. It's one story, relational spirituality.
It's beautiful.
Well, we don't want to end without having you tell folks where they can find your work, because we want every person listening to jump straight off this episode and find every great thing you're doing. So will you talk about the easiest way for folks to find your work?
Oh, well, David and Sissy, thank you. And I want to start by applauding and honoring your work and all of the families and children who are touched by your support in awakening the spiritual core in the whole child formation. The science and stories and some of the practices that are told in the language of life can be found in my 2 books, The Awakened Brain. The Awakened Brain applies to adults and children because, of course, we are always on a spiritual path. We keep growing and deepening. And in The Awakened Brain, I share the science and some practices and stories of the journey of the spiritual path. The Spiritual Child, my first book, which you so graciously brought into some of your work, The Spiritual Child is specifically for parents. The Spiritual Child talks about the science that supports what many parents knew in their heart, which is there is nothing as profoundly important in the formation of a resilient child, a healthy child, an ethical child, a loving child, as God in the family.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for these reminders. I don't know how we expand where this podcast would go, but I want every parent on the planet to hear, every person on the planet to hear, just like you said, that science is bearing witness to the truth that we all know of how we're made and who we're made for and how we're made to connect.
Our work right now as a parent community is in the public square to re-sanctify who we are and who we are to one another. And of course, that includes everybody.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Well, thank you so much. You are making such a difference to us and certainly to the world. We're just so grateful for your work.
Honor to spend time with you.
Yes.
It's an honor and a joy, and I'm uplifted by your very sacred work.
Well, us, yours, certainly.
Blessings on your day.
Blessings.
David, what a team we have that we get to call friends who help make this podcast possible.
Amanda Young, our operations manager.
Chris Starrett, our engineer.
Our management team at H Squared.
And we are thrilled to be a part of the That Sounds Fun network.
Our music was created by the insanely talented Dave Haywood of Lady A.
And if this podcast felt helpful to you, please consider subscribing, liking, sharing, all the things.
We are grateful for you and cheering you on always.